Hey folks, we are going to continue working on Spelljammer Combat and Exploration artwork today. Give me a chance here to check my signal, make sure I'm coming through clearly, and then we'll get to work here for maybe 100 minutes, something like that. So if you're catching this in the future, I'll be doing intro spiel for like another minute or two, so you can skip ahead to when we get into the thick of action. But if you're new here, checking my signal here. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Check signal here. Mic check. That's plenty loud. Actually, is that too loud? Nah, we're doing good. All right, cool. Well, if you're new here, hey, my name is Theurgy. I create role-playing game supplements. I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for the past 5 years. There is a slew of work that I've already created and published online that you can see links to DMsGuild down below. And hold on here real quick. I'm pressing buttons to get some signal boost across the interwebs. Click. All the books down there, they have free previews. So if you're here for artwork, there's probably about 150 illustrations in just the books that I have linked down below that you can take a look at. If you're here for D&D mechanics and ideas, then, well, the stuff that I build, they're intended for both sides of the DM screen. Both players and DMs can benefit from a lot of the mechanics that I present in the books that are down below. And since they're free previews, if you think some of that, you can check this stuff out, use it in your game. I myself, as a DM, I run campaigns from level 1 to 20 in about 200 to 250-ish hours, typically. And so I run the tools that I build and I publish online are things that I either need for the campaign that I'm currently running or ideas that I'm putting together for a campaign that I'm looking forward to running. Like Spelljammer is something that I'll be running a campaign for. Our current team is level 20. So once they end the campaign, we start over, we'll be doing Spelljammer stuff. So this document that I'm building right now is I'll be using all those tools in our own campaign as well. And the playtesting for it went great using Descent into Avernus as well as Lyzaraxis as our testing ground for the different vehicle mechanics that we implement in that system. So be welcome to check this thing out. We're currently, let's see, hold on. Let's see, I've just published that I'm live on Twitter, so if you want to get notifications in the future that I'm live, you can follow me on Twitter at Theurgy, where I'll do links every time I go live, plus occasionally provide artwork for different things that I've created, like this from last week. You can check that stuff out. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers, so anyone that's interested, I think are having a good time here, or this stuff is cool, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notification in the future when I'm live, and help me continue building momentum for the channel. So we're currently at episode 255. Thank you. We're currently at episode 255. We built this book cover around episode 15. So you can go into the Wayback Machine of our playlist here on the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration playlist I have on YouTube here at Theurgy to see the creation of this book cover. But otherwise, so I'm talking about creating. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. So when we have an idea like rebuilding how Spelljammer mechanics, physics, combat, and exploration work inside of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, we test the ideas. If they turn out well, we type them all up. We hire an editor who'll wordsmith and make a word good, come back to us, give it back to us. I use Microsoft Word, so we drop it into a Word program and start breaking up the text into bite-sized ideas that we distribute across the pages. And as you can see here, during that process, there's opportunities for us to create gaps in the text to allow us to breathe ideas into the equation for folks to take a look at. Once all the pages are laid out and we're happy with where we're at, we'll zoom into each individual page here. We'll pluck this page out as a PDF, come over here into Photoshop, drop it in as a PSD file, and then we begin painting directly on it. And once it's done, we extract it, drop it back into the document, and when all of the pages are full of art, I leave them out initially because adding a ton of images to the Word file starts to increase the size of the file, and it starts loading slower. So when I'm streaming like this, becomes more difficult to see how long that took. That's without any photos or any images. Now add in 50 images, and it's processing time to resize and zoom and render the instance becomes very difficult for the computer to manage. So I generally leave all the image files out until it's done. I'll go in and I'll drop in an image, make sure it fits on the page like I expect it to. But these pages are exact replicas of the pages that we just built. So if they sit pretty here, I know they'll sit pretty here. And this is after doing about 400 pages worth of content. So I've got a pretty good idea that when it looks right on Photoshop, it looks right in Word. But I'll occasionally scoop up a picture and drop it in there just to make sure. But so far, everything's been consistent. So when I finish all the illustrations, I'll be dropping it all in and fusing it, and then you guys can take a look at the rough draft of the model of the book that we put out. But once it's finished, we'll seal it all into a PDF. We'll publish it online on DMsGuild, just like below, and you'll be able to click on the free preview. But there's also 8 maps for Light of Xeraxis, as well as just like 3 or 4 system maps. There's all the ship tokens at the 500-foot, 50-foot, 5-foot scale. And we have all the tokens for all the creatures that you can fight at the scale of ships at the 50-foot scale or larger. All the creatures that can naturally exist inside or unnaturally exist inside a wild space in the astral sea that the characters can deal with. And all the NPC and creature tokens from Light of Xeraxis when you're on ships. So if you're using the conversion guide we have at the back end of this document, the first 87 pages are mechanics. The back 20 pages is a conversion guide using these mechanics to make Light of Xeraxis using these physics. So it changes up the game some, and it's fun. So we provided all the tokens that you need to actually do that in the game that you get with it when you buy it. So there you go. And then as we create more stuff, and if we publish it on DMsGuild, we'll be able to bundle it with this book so that we start reducing the cost of everything for people to buy things together. Just like the Spell Point Mana stuff down there, it's like 35% off. So like for $20, you get $30 worth of classes, spellcasting, concepts, mechanics, etc. Hey Karen, I think I'm done rambling now, so let's get back to work. Actually, before we dive completely into it, I tore out this page, specifically page 66, as a standalone document, so I can get really deep into the layers and the rendering as we do the community that we're going to paint here. But it came out of this exploration chapter, and I just want to show off the exploration chapter real quick because it's coming along nicely. As soon as it finishes loading, this is why I put page 66 on a separate document, because the exploration chapter is only like 8 pages, I think. And even at 8 pages, this is how long it's taking for the exploration chapter to load. So this page that we're working on right now, page 66, and page, I think it was page 57, we finished that illustration last week. Those are the 2 most illustration intense pages inside of the exploration chapter. But there's a shitload of just technical information that's packed into these pages about navigating wild space, navigating astral space, tracking things through wild space, noticing objects, interacting with objects in general as you're zipping around at 100 million miles per day. So just to flip through these here real quick, there was the here, let's expand this out a bit. I can't see you right now because I blacked out my screen, so I know that you guys are over here someplace. But here's page 57 that we created. So this is the initial introduction page to the chapter. Every one of these locks are things that are completely finished. And did we no, we haven't completely finished this page yet. So this page is completely done. This page is I could potentially put like a little vignette here of like a star system or astral wash or something. So technically that, honestly, technically that isn't done. So I'm going to withdraw that lock. We're looking here. We have a little spot here that we can put a little vignette inside of as well, some sort of environmental something or other. This page is done. There's not enough space left over in these gaps for me to want to put in an illustration. It would be crowding it. This page has no room for text. The visual elements are the tables themselves. Here again, tables and sidebars are the elements. I have to fix that when we get to it. Here we have, again, this is tables that are breaking things down, and you can see that all these different topics of conversation, it's the visual language of it breaks itself up. But here's where we ended up with traveling in wild space, mapping between worlds, where we have a grid where each square in this map, each grid is 100 million miles, and this is the Xeraxis space system. So you got A, which is Xeraxis, the central star, and then you got B, which is Verdurin and Rivis and Zarindar here on D, and then you have E, the Imperial Citadel, which shares the same orbit as their home world, Zarindar, and it's 1-2 days away by ship, 100 million miles, 200 million miles to get from D to E. And then F is the edge of wild space. So only if you're outside here in the Astral Sea, it takes 1 day to get to the Citadel from your arrival point, which is what's described in the Light of Xeraxis adventure. This is realm space. These are 400 million miles squares. Realm space has a 1.6 billion mile reach from the edge of wild space here at J and the Sun, the central star. And at the 400 billion mile scale, these inner planets, Anadia, Kalair, Toril itself at D, these are all inside the same 400 million mile space, while E and F are basically sharing the same 400 million miles square here, and then you got outer system planets here, and then you got the edge of wild space there. So that's really huge. So here we're still building it, but here's the inner planets for realm space. With 50 million miles squares, which is, you move 100 million miles per day in a spelljamming ship. So at this scale, you can navigate around the inner system at 2 squares per day, moving from planet to planet. So when we build this out, we'll have A, B, C, D, somewhere around inside of here, E, whatever it scales out to. Anadia at the 50 scale would be here. Kalair would be 100 million miles, which is here. And then Toril would skip that, would be here. And then we'd have Carpri, which would be skip 1, that's here. And then Chandos, skip 1, that's here. So we're skipping this one, skipping this one, skipping this one. So we'll conceal those rings. But we'll be able to lay those planets down here as well as here. And at that scale, again, this is how you can do like a hex crawl or a point crawl around inside of a system map, by having square grids that your ships are moving from. And as you can see over here, we're still working on this map, but it's talking about the speed of planets orbiting orbiting its central star, 1.2 billion miles to go around the sun. That's Saloon. I need to build an actual system map. But if this was the sun and this was Toril, it'd be 400 million miles away. No, sorry. Toril, yeah, 200 million miles away from the central sun. So if we were to do that, this would be 200 million miles. So that'd be 50, 100 million, 150, 200 million miles away. And so it would make at 50 million squares, 50 million miles per square, this would take 1.2 billion miles to make this circle around the sun, which breaks down 1.2 billion miles per year, breaks down to about 300 million miles per season, which breaks down to about 3 million miles per day, which breaks down to just about 150,000 miles per hour, which breaks down to about 300 miles per round that a planet orbits the sun at this speed, or at this range. And since Spelljammer ships can move 100 million miles per day, it's really easy to be able to navigate that space. And obviously we're covering text here, so we're still in the process of building these out. But you can see here, that's how that system works. So if a planet takes only 300 miles per day circling the sun, and you can move 100 million miles per day, when you're working a system map as a hex crawl or a point crawl, those planets are stationary. They are fixed objects in space that you're going to be able to move to and from much more quickly than the planets are going to adjust their position around the sun. Similarly, a moon only moves 50,000 miles per day as well. So even a minor helm which can only move 1 million miles per day, it might not be able to keep up with a planet rotating around the sun, and so you need a major helm to travel from world to world. But a minor helm, a fighter craft or small carrier ship, a personnel ship, can fly from Toril to Selûne, the moon. You can fly from your planet to the moon and back, and navigate around inside of that space that that specific world holds. And each planet is its own world. Anadia, Kalair, Toril, Carpuri, Chandos. These are all different worlds inside of the hex crawl. And once you get inside this square, like this square, if that's where Toril is at, when you zoom into this square specifically, now we're looking at Toril and Selûne specifically on the map. 50 million miles would break down to a 10 by 10 square would be 500, this would be 50 million miles. A 10 by 10 space would be 1 million miles. That would have just a single square inside of here. So zoom in from 50 million miles to 5 million miles to 5 million miles to 500,000 miles to 50. So at a 500,000 mile scale, we'd be at, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A 10 by 10 grid here would be 500,000 miles, and each square here would be 50,000. Selûne 183,000 miles away. 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, somewhere inside that 150 to 200,000 square block is where Selûne is, 183,000 miles away. There you go. So you can scale down 4 magnitude from 50 million to 5 million. Sorry, this is a 50 million miles square down to a 50,000 mile square. 50 million, 5 million, 500,000, 50,000. That's a magnitude of 4 scales down to a system map where you could be doing a hex crawl inside of this space with each square being 50,000 miles. Basically, every minute you can move 2 squares in a major helm, or basically I think it's every 2 hours in a minor helm. So you can also do like a pirate hex crawl here, where Selûne and the asteroids that trail it, you could be doing pirate stuff out here, depending on what speed of ship you're using. But that's how you can do basically system crawls, by doing random encounters and events with the random encounter maps that are provided in the Spelljammer's Adventures in Space book that Wizards published, or by using our visibility chart to just run across random objects on a D10 at the size of the object, or maybe scale it down to a D8 or even a D6 for the size of object that you would be potentially encountering, depending on how far away from it is that you are. So anyway, so there's that, and then this is the this is page 66, which we are literally working on. We reformatted and are working on now. So that's a quick crash course and walkthrough on how scaling system maps work for hex crawls, even though I guess I just have to call it a grid crawl, but because it could be a hex crawl, or it could be, I use squares, so that's my square grid, but you could also use the same idea of hex crawling around it using the hex, which is what 2nd edition did. But 2nd edition spent time in the box set talking about hex crawling in astral space. Wizards didn't invest any time on that, and they didn't provide either the option of a grid or a hex. They used a point crawl aspect, where if you want to move from one planet to another planet, it's going to take you, say, 2 days to get there, and during that point crawl, during that travel time, you could have anywhere from 1 to D4 to D8 of encounters that you could run across while you're traveling from point A to point B. So 5e simplifies maps by making them point crawls without boring you or bogging you down with the details of what should be in that space in between. Just use a random table, and maybe you'll run across an Illithid, maybe you'll run across an astral fisherman, who knows. That's kind of how they approach it, but most people want more crunch to visualize with the maps that they're using, especially if they're going to be using a VTT. There has to be map systems there for people to be able to engage with visually and physically by moving tokens around the space. So you have to be able to build a space for them to move around in. And so that gets us to now we understand how systems work and how planets orbit central stars and how moons orbit planets. We can start looking at how do you engage with the spherical gravity, which we went over in yesterday's session. You can look at, and then if you're not large enough to have spherical gravity on your planet, then you're looking at gravity fields, which is just basically a gravity plane at a massive scale. And so this is the depiction of a planet with a ring orbiting it, and so the planet has spherical gravity, so anything that enters this square with the planet gets pulled into it as gravity does. But this belt, this circle, is the ring that surrounds the planet, and the ring is just outside of its spherical gravity, so it surrounds it. It doesn't have any. It's basically all the rocks in the ring are aligned with each other, so they're all in the same plane, but they're far enough away from the planet to not immediately get pulled in and become comets or asteroids, comets, shooting stars to fall to the planet's surface. But they can't break orbit either because they don't have any momentum other than circling around the planet. So all the movement is in orbit around the planet. So the rocks stay in these squares surrounding the planet, and occasionally, if some of these rocks were to break out of orbit and fall towards the planet, occasionally another rock will, like an asteroid will punch through a ring occasionally and knock stuff around. And if that stuff gets knocked out and pushed out of the ring towards the planet, then it'll eventually become a shooting star and fall to the planet's surface. But until that risk happens, it's safe to build a house here, because it could be hundreds of years before a comet shows up and does anything bad to your neighborhood. So people are willing to take that risk here in space. So that was a really long conversation point here. Oh, it only took 8 minutes. That's great. So now we can dive in and we can actually start building our actual environment up here. So there's been some false starts, some revisions, some reimaginings, and now that we're here, I'm super stoked to be here. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit like that. I think, I want to get rid of all this mass here. Trim that down. And then we're going to start building. We're going to just start building rocks out here and make a little rustic community. We discovered this ring world. Like, this planet could be full of incredibly hostile creatures. Like, it could be all undead, or it could be all giants, or all beholders. Who knows? It could be any sort of monsters and nightmare realities that the people, humanoids like the normal characters, don't have to contend with, because they live out here in the ring world. It could be that there's massive resources down on the surface of the planet that it makes it's too hostile to form a community down there, but the resources are so valuable that spelljamming entrepreneurs have been willing to establish this border community on this ring world as a staging ground to run sorties down to the surface of the planet to perform raids to gather resources and leave again. Like, maybe the surface of the planet is covered in platinum, and you can go down there and you can try to extract chunks of platinum ore from the surface of the planet. But as soon as you do that, you attract, I don't know, landworms or whatever, And so you go down there, they'll kill everyone that's working on the ore. So like in Dune, you have to lift them off the planet and run away with them so they can get away from whatever creature it is that's going to destroy you trying to mine the surface. So you have to keep out in orbit. So you're either going to continuously have ships that are flying around inside the atmosphere, picking up and dropping off at different points, running away from the threats that arise, or you're going to get yourself a decent rest and just go back out to the ring world and drop your ore, dump your harvest, which would then get gathered up by a freighter vessel that would then leave the orbit of the planet and venture off to wherever it is that you're going to distribute the ore. So like that would be a great explanation as to why this ring world would exist around this planet, and it would create a go-to source of adventure. Like you're adventurers, you're looking for work, you're stuck on this asteroid because your parents died in a worm attack, so now you have to try to find your way out of the system or pick up their work if that's what you want to do, or maybe like Captain Hook set them up and got them killed by sabotaging their lifter, and so they got caught out in that manner. Who knows? There's all sorts of ways that you could play it, but I think that'd be a fun little campaign. Like I would run that. I would totally run that. That would be fun as hell. So right now we're going to, we're just going to build some, right now we're just going to build some rocks. So we got this lavender rock going on. Thanks for the suggestion, Karen. So I'm just going to build some mounds here. But I want them to be large enough that they're blocking the actual edge of the ring here, so it has this roughness to it. Far enough away it'd be smooth, but up close like this, it's going to be all sorts of rocky, rough terrain. That's the idea anyway. That's what we're working on, and then it just fades into. It just fades out as you get further and further away. But, people ask, like, how do you run a level, like a campaign from level 1 to 20? You have to start off with a fun premise that there's opportunities for first level characters to do things all the way up through 20th level characters. Like a 20th level adventure, like a campaign that went from level 1 of you being stuck on this ring world all the way up through 20th level. Like at 20th level, you're like terraforming the planet. You're like purging the world of whatever evil is preventing you from getting down there. Or you're reforging the campaign environment somehow. Your characters become so powerful that they literally reshape the fabric of the campaign that they're in. And then you can use that as a reference in your next Spelljammer campaign. It could be a guess. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. And the creatures that exist inside of the gas world, they're all flying creatures, so they can chase after your ship. So you can't but they can't move they can't fly out of atmosphere because they won't last the duration. Like we have mechanics in here about air supplies. So creatures that can fly out of atmosphere on their own air supply, they generally exhaust it in a minute if they don't have something that's going to artificially preserve that air supply for them. So that makes it safe for you to leave atmosphere to run away and then drop back into another area. But there could be like you said, gas deposits of some sort that the creatures maybe they eat that. So you're competing for a resource. Like a massive sky whale might be eating plankton, but that plankton is I don't know, sprinkle it on some, pour it down the throat of a corpse and they rise from the dead, for instance. That could be what this gas resource is. So the whales themselves are immortal, and they can provide all sorts of, if you go whaling, sorry, people that love whales, but these Kandori, if you harvest their glands or whatever, it's like a youth, maybe it's a youth serum. And then on top of that, the actual crystals itself that these whales are eating, that could have itself its own properties. Like if you harvest all that material and then refine it, then it becomes a resurrection potion. And so the campaign, once your characters get a high enough level and they can start affording resurrection potions on themselves, then they're going in. They can get themselves killed. As long as you can recover the body and pour the serum into the throat, you can bring them back. But one of the threats is having your ship swallowed by a whale. So there's no bodies to recover. Or they get lost in the depths of the planet, and they get lost forever because you can't find them because they're just, tumbling through the gas world forever. And it's in this instance, it's 800 miles. This is a 1,000 mile square that this planet's sitting inside of. So it's not like impossibly large, but it's still significant in size. It's like that's a way you could play it out. Right now, I'm just pulling my smudge tool through the ring here with a really high 70% strength, so that I create this roughage that's going on here, so I can start creating language about, like, way out here, that far away, you're not going to see any specific details about any particular rock. But as it comes around the curve, the roughness, the texture that we have here starts to manifest itself into larger and larger chunks, to the point where you're like, oh, these are all asteroids or rocks that are floating in orbit together. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here by creating this roughage. We'll see how well I do. And then as we get closer and closer, we can start building, creating buildings and little, like each rock is its own little potential community. And the rocks can be connected with, like we showed 2 sessions ago, little swinging bridges. That creates this neat little, well, it feels like a Chinese province with like all those those really crazy earth mounds, or like tight mesas that are like 500 feet wide, but they just like spike up 1,000 feet. Like really weird mounds that I've seen in like really rural China or Tibet, maybe. I don't know anything about it. I've just seen illustrations. But if the ground were lava in that sort of setting, those steps or those plateaus that are dispersed across the landscape, you'd have your communities up there, and then you'd have to find ways to hop from community to community. So these swinging bridges would be a fun way to do that. Plus, you've got it's only 500 gold to buy a minor helm, which can do 100 miles in a round. So for you to fly into the planet and go through the planet would only take 8 rounds. Maybe the like the thick denseness of the atmosphere slows your ship by a scale of 100. So instead of 800 miles of planet diameter, instead of that taking 8 rounds, maybe instead it takes 100 miles in a round, then it becomes 100 miles in a minute, then it becomes 100 miles in 10 minutes. So it'd take you a little bit over an hour to cross from one side of the planet to the other by flying literally through it. But it would be so hostile down there that like maybe there's like magic dead areas. Maybe that's the threat. There's a magic dead core that if you fly too close to the center of the planet, then the magic of your Spelljammer gives out. And the only way for you to descend past the 600 mile mark, like you have to do it physically. So like you have Kandori riders, like Kuatoa could be the major species that has a hate on people. And so Kuatoa riding on the back of Kandori could be the real masters of this planet. And even though your little freighter ship, and again, these minor helms can only be up to 50 feet in size, so you can only collect so much ore before your ship is full and you have to leave orbit and go dump it off on the ring world, or there's like a vessel that's in orbit, but like maybe the power of the vessel is so strong that it immediately attracts the attention of Kandori that try to eat your ship, so now you're constantly having melee combat with Kandori whales sensing your ship as a threat. Like these Kandori could be like 300 or 400 feet in size, So like your little skiff, your mining skiff being only 40 feet in size, it's so small in comparison to Kandori that it doesn't consider it a direct threat. But like a Spelljammer ship that's larger than 50 feet, it immediately recognizes something that large to be a threat to its territory. So it begins attacking you constantly. That could explain why you don't have vessels that can travel significantly faster, hanging out inside of the atmosphere of the planet. See, this is all self-referencing. It builds itself out into a thing. Hey, Zona, like that, you could totally run a campaign off of that, where you're fighting Kuatoa on the back of Kandori in your little mining skiffs, trying to collect resurrection crystals out of the atmosphere. Fucking cool, man. I could totally see that being a fun, like, it might not, I could run that as a 1 to 20 campaign, but unless we really flesh it out and people love the idea of that, I would instead like maybe make it like if you drop that into your Spelljammer campaign, you could hang out there for like 2 or 3 levels as like a side quest, or just like as a, like if you're doing a mining operation, sort of like a Dominion campaign where you're building a guild of some sort. That could easily be a vignette that you could run. I say vignette a lot because a vignette, like if this was a completed photo, a vignette is an illustration that doesn't have set borders. Like it fades out along the edges, like a circular picture that doesn't have an actual frame border, that just fades into the background and like dissipates into transparency. That's a vignette, technically, like a vignette photograph, where only the frame that you put the picture in defines the end of the picture. It just fades out, no natural hard end borders. Like this fade here is kind of like is the mentality of a vignette. While this hard break here, this absolute border here, cannot be a vignette by nature. So there's like an aspect of vignette in the background here of this planet illustration, but like this whole edge here, that is not a vignette. That is a border. So you have that definition of what one piece of art is compared to another. And so when I'm talking about these little adventure ideas, those are vignettes. Because like you could build that like into a standalone adventure, but if you wanted to, you could blow it out into an entire campaign, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you and your team want to go while you're doing that stuff. But just as a little standalone vignette, you could easily run one adventure or one level worth of adventure, or even like 5 levels of adventure, and at the end of it, now you've got your resurrection content. And now you can leave this place having gathered the resources that you needed to go resurrect your dead dad or whatever. Whatever it is that your actual quests are, you can go do that now. But that's how I would begin in building out like a 20 level campaign. I don't build 20 level campaigns. I create enough gaps in space and organic growth that I can take, like, we build an environment and a game space, a pitch, a campaign pitch that has enough, that's robust enough narratively, mechanically, and as a game environment that we could build it out to a 20 level campaign if we decide it's fun. But going in, we only assume maybe 5 or 10 levels worth of campaign, because if it falls apart, you don't want to feel disappointed that, oh, this didn't go to level 20, that sucks. It's like, no, we are building through different aspects, like different phases of a campaign, and we're doing a new session 0 every 5 levels to reassess. Do we want to stop this, keep it going, where are we at with this? And as we keep checking in over the life of the campaign, that's when we decide, are we taking this to level 20 over time, or do we want to cap this off like at level 9? And if you're honest with yourself about, are you having fun with this game space? Are you feeling an emotional connection to your characters, the NPCs? Is the threat to the environment, is that significant enough to make it worth your time to want to stick it out? Are you having fun with it? If these are all yes, down the board, you're loving it, then that's got the potential of being able to build itself out to a 20-level campaign if your team's willing to stick with it. But they're like, I'm not enjoying this one so much fun. It's like, okay, cool. Do we want to take what we have, cap that off, and use that as a jumping point to change something with new characters someplace else? Do we just want to change the direction where we're going right now, but keep the same characters because the only thing we don't like is the scenario, but we love the characters and the dynamic interaction? Like, you can keep moving and shifting things on the fly as you proceed through the campaign to make sure that you're catering to what you as a DM are enjoying and having the players be on the same page. And if they aren't, time for change. What do we want to change about what we got going on? Do we need to start over again? And the more and more you do this, the less of a big deal it is about whether the campaign survives or not, because you're already sort of pacing it to be able to cap off at level 5. At the end of level 5, instead of gaining a level, you conclude the campaign, your characters retire. That's what basically you're doing at level 20. It's like, we don't have any more levels to gain, so let's cap off the campaign. Or do you guys want to start earning epic boons as little kicker effects, but you're not actually going to gain another level? Like, maybe we'll get 3 hit points plus, like, another spell slot or something like that. Whatever. But that makes leveling up and running a campaign, like, not a big deal anymore. And when it's not a big deal anymore, there's no stress on you as a DM to have, like, this big overarching plot line that's going to take you from level 1 to 20. It's going to organically evolve as a growing threat to the game campaign if everyone decides they're having fun and they want to stick with it. So the level 1 to 5 is kind of fucking around and getting a feel for the space, and if we like it, well then, okay, great. Let's escalate it and find a larger scale threat that will keep your character's attention, like, from level 5 to 10 when you're becoming pretty damn powerful. Are you still having fun? Yes, no. And if the answer is yeah, we're still having a lot of fun with this. Like, okay, cool. Well, then let's push it from level 10 up to level 15, where we're starting to deal with extraplanar threats or leaving, like, world-ending tragedies and events like that. And, like, level 20, to get into a level 20 campaign, you're basically identifying a grudge with a god or an extraplanar power, something that's so vast and significant that it requires world-changing magic or like demigod level heroes to do something about it. And the result of it, as we discussed earlier, is basically changing the fabric of society, of the campaign world, of the gods themselves. Like, you are changing fate for reality in that game space. And if your campaign warrants you getting to that space, to that level, then awesome, so be it. But you're never thinking that's where we're going to go. It's you allow the threat to emerge. And we've talked about this on my Eberron stream on Mondays and Thursday nights, about layering in more threats and more obstacles for the characters to overcome than they can ever process on their own. Every time they solve a problem, it creates two new problems. So they're constantly having to pick their battle. Also easier to... Yeah, absolutely. Could also be... Yes. Yeah. There could be like a core there could be like a 50-mile core or something that's like made out of adamantium or something, like incredibly valuable material. However it is that you want to run a campaign, whatever makes sense, whatever your team decides is fun. But this is like, you can design this thing. Like, this is a loose idea that we have. Like, that's the premise. There's something valuable inside this gas world that is worth people risking their lives to mine. What do you guys want that thing to be? And how do you guys want to engage it? And if this is capturing the imagination of your team while you spitball ideas during your session 0, it'll become evident, is this a fun world to play around in? Do they want to start there and opt out? Well, then cool, let's build an entire system where all the planets have resources like this or whatever. Or like, let's make a normal world that you guys can eventually go back to. But for the first few levels, like, this is the world that you guys are going to mess around on to create the backdrop of where the campaign came from. So you could decide that being in spelljamming ships sucks and you want to get on the ground someplace, like that's your goal. So okay, great. By level 5, you're able to retire from this horrible asteroid mining operation and go settle down on Paradise, your home world. It's called Paradise, where everything is beautiful there. So you set up a dominion there. You'll have your own estate, and you get involved in the local politics. And it has, Paradise isn't all that apparently it's cracked up to be. You've only heard of it. You've nostalgized it and romanticized what the world of Paradise is, but you find out that actually the history of it's an ironic title. There's actually horrible things that happen on that planet as well. And now at 5th level, you are going to start exploring all of what that implies. And, that becomes a shift in your campaign. And it started out here, and if you think that's cool, maybe by the time you resolve the threat to your estate, you're level 10, and now you're finding that it folds back in to the spelljamming campaign. So you're touching base. This will be your 3rd session 0 at the end of the 10th level. Are we having fun here? Where do we want to go with this? Bob's your uncle. That's how you thread through a campaign from one tier to the next, to make sure you continue to have emotional buy-in from your team, so that as you start investing your creative energy to creating the next leg, the next season of your show, that the audience is still on board with you, the players, because the actors and the audience are the same. So they have to be excited about not only the storyline and what the surprises are as an audience. They have to be invested enough to do the work as the actors to want to actually be involved and continue putting the work in themselves. I'm going to actually tear this out right here. I'm seeing a transition point from one part of the rocks to the next. So I can break that out, and I can jump into here, and I can continue fleshing out these rocks in here. Separately from this foreground here. But as we have described here in the illustration, to the left and below, a small 800-mile planet A occupies a 1,000-mile square with rings of rocks ranging from 50 feet to 5.5 d10 miles in size. B. This is sufficient space for vegetation and communities to take root. Water caught in the gravity plane drains into the spaces between the rocks, forming a long river system and weather on both sides of the ring's gravity plane. So we know that's 800 miles. So like these rings, that's about one ring there, 2, 3, 4. That's about a 200-mile wide ring. So back here, that's 200 miles. You can see the curve there, and it starts to broaden here, actually. This is actually where the curve is at. I've carved it in way too far. But that's awesome. We have all this extra space here now. Since we're working on this second layer of space, let's tear this out like that and get rid of this to make a 3rd plane. Like that. So we're working in these different scales. So we'll conceal that for now, and we'll stick with this. So right now we're building these rocks so that there's gaps between them, so we can depict the water that'll be flowing through here. I don't know, maybe something like this, and then we'll work on a transparency of it, and we'll figure it out. I love doing water. I love doing reflections. It's going to be fucking fun. Right now, I'm just building the boulders that are just going to be floating. Karen, is this color, is this still feeling good? Also, right. I know that you're helping me call the shots on how we're doing color, and I know you were asking about lavender colors initially, but it looks like I'm bleeding into more of a grayish space. cool. Because what we're going to end up doing is we're going to put trees, grass, buildings. So this raw rock color is going to get covered up with like a darker soil. But this off green root, I think, is a good place. Is a real fine way to start, to quote Led Zeppelin. So thanks for the check-in. I appreciate it. Very, very, very much appreciate it. I'm going to cut that there and then drop that there and then... fade those rocks down a bit more by just erasing at them a little bit. There. That'll do. And then we got this rock here, but we're going to have this rock here start blocking that bend. So we're using our own terrain to create, just like with Bob Ross paintings, we're creating overlapping layers that will limit our field of vision, so that we can start inferring depth by the way that objects are folding around each other, just like how Bob will paint trees over a hill, but the little gaps between the leaves and the tree that gets painted, you can still see little gaps in that there's a hill back there. Because I spent a shitload. I did about 120 Bob Ross paintings in Photoshop, learning how to make environments, and that study, that year I spent invested in studying Bob Ross art, is allowed me to develop a sense of terrain, and it only takes a couple hours to build, a happy tree illustration if I don't think about it. If I really want to invest in the elements and make it look really good, I can put 5 or 6 hours into it, and it's going to be a great painting, that I can sell for $300, $400. And so using those techniques in my fantasy illustrations allows me to really easily build environments. And environments, it helps sell the fantasy world. So by having a good skill set and being able to paint, like basically Magic the Gathering land cards at the rate of 1 card per 7 or maybe 10 hours if I really want to get intense with it, that allows me to export myself into fantasy books and drop in lots of forest or desert or whatever kind of environment I want to help lean into the fantasy setting that the characters are adventuring inside of. The environments, the terrain that characters are perceiving are as important as the characters themselves, because it helps root them into the community. It's like, oh, this swinging bridge world is super cool, and that allows us to break up each plant, like each of these rocks is its own little vignette that we can peel out one rock or like 4 or 5 rocks and have them on a separate encounter map. Like, this is the map environment that you're dealing with right now, like in your Mario world, scrolling from planet to planet via bridges, connecting all of them as you make your way around the loop of 1,000, 1,000, 2,000. This is an 8,000 mile loop essentially that you've got of a 200-mile wide stretch that you could build out an entire world over time as you continue exploring both the A and B, like the top and bottom side, because there's going to be communities here and communities here that might not necessarily be allies at all, but they use the same water source that flows between the rocks that are buoyant at the center of this ring. So these rocks are kind of like keeping the water inside of this ring space. It's like a major risk to these communities is having one of these rocks blown out that causes the water to pour out and then starting to fill the space in between the ring and the world, and then just naturally falls to the surface of the planet. And now you're just losing water. That could be a major eco-terrorist threat to these communities. Like, we can't afford to have our water line broken. It'll just drain out into space, and we'll lose that resource. And now everyone's water level is dropping, and that's potentially a huge threat to your community. If I can say that like another 4 or 5 times, threat. I think I'm missing text over there. But this is honestly, one of the things I love about painting like this and being on stream and just kicking shit with you guys is that we just get to riff off of things, just make stuff up as we go. But this is that ideation process that we go through. Rocks facing the lavender blue underneath the green and crown. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Perhaps leave the vertical rock facing the lavender blue underneath the green and brown of soil and plants. It should be a great. Oh, so like the inner strip here, and then soil it up on top of it. So like we'll see that strip facing the planet. And then like this crest here, like down here, depending on how perspective works here. I see, because the soil would roll off the side of the planet and then would naturally drift in until it hits the spherical gravity here, and then would descend as basically dirt rain. That's perfect. So we can have like that, like a sandwich effect. That's fucking great. Oh my god. That's brilliant, Karen. Thank you. I'm really glad you're around. Thanks a lot for hanging out with me. But this is, like this is the kind of session zeros I have with my players. Like, what do you think about this idea? What kind of characters do you want to play in this space? What's, blah, 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 blah. How do you want to do this? Where is this? Oh, that's pretty good. I don't want this to be too linear. Because like there could be like chunks of rock on top of rock. And then the dirt. I'll have to take a picture of it, but there's a stone wall out my back door, and when I first moved in, those rocks were bare. They were like fresh hewn stone. But now I'm in my third year of being in this house, and those rocks are being covered over with moss, and grass is starting to grow out of that moss. But if I wanted to, I could take a knife and scrape underneath the rock. Underneath the moss, and lift it up like I'm scalping the rock. I could peel it up, but it's thick enough it'd be like carpet that I'm peeling open. But that's what nature does. So it's got like this mossy, almost fern-like fuzz that's starting to hang down and droop down over the side of the rock, like hanging ivy. And in a world size, like if this rock here is a mile and a half in size, I could have 300 feet worth of droppage down the size, and that rock is 7,500 feet in size. So a 300-foot dripping of ivy rock roots and plants hanging off the side of it is still going to leave a massive amount of exposed bare stone. In this case, you're talking like lavender. And so we can have like that drippy effect on both sides of the gravity plane and have like this massive bare strip in between. And like if these are like 1 mile scale rocks that we're looking at back here, there could be geodes and hollowed out spaces inside of these that are their own underdark layers that are all separated. But like if we get like if we have like a rock here and we have a rock here, and then there's a bigger rock that ends up dropping in here, and your gravity plane is, say, here, right? And then you have more rocks that are stacked up here, and these all fuse together with nature growing out of it. As long as it stays under 10 miles in size overall, we generally use larger than 10 miles equals spherical gravity. So as these rocks cluster together along the gravity plane, like if this is a 1.5 mile rock, and this is a 2 mile rock, and this is a 3 mile rock, all together that's going to be 3, 4, 5. That's only 5. This is like a 5 mile space, right? But the middle of it is hollow. There's this big hollow space that's like a half mile in height and like maybe a mile wide. That's like Minzo Baranzan's size cavern inside of this fusion of rocks that are only being held together by millennia of roots grinding, like knitting themselves together into knots that form between these gaps here. So an ambitious druid would be able to actually tunnel through that stuff and expose this area to fresh air, which could unleash all sorts of horrors that were bottled up inside of this space that comes spewing out like From. I don't know if you've watched that TV show called From on Paramount or not. It's made by the same people that made Lost, and it kind of has a Lost vibe. But there's this like Underdark underneath this town that everyone's stuck inside of. Monsters come out of this Underdark. They sleep down there, and they come out at night. And one of them decided to blow a hole in the floor of their house, and it exposed this Underdark cavern down there. So now these creatures can get up inside of their house, and like, oh my god, this is horrible. Anyway, but that's how these communities, these environments can be fused from a topographical, I guess, perspective. But as we continue building, like we're gonna need to make like a house, right? So like we'll have a house here in the foreground, and then like maybe here there'll be a forest. We're gonna have to figure out the scale so that the structures that we build are gonna be close enough for us to be able to have detail for you to be able to get what it is, like an isometric or three-dimensional map, but at a large enough scale that you'll be able to see, you know, that like there's a pathway here that leads to a house, you know, and then you got like a pin over here, and then you got some rolling terrain, and then you got like another house over here, and like this all leads down into a pool here of water. Like you have like these little pond areas. So we have to figure out how we're going to represent all this stuff. What's our proper sense of scale? Because we want this place to look huge, so having it bleed off screen is good. So it implies immeasurable width, but so that's what we're still figuring out. So right now we're just building terrain, right? And by breaking these things into layers like this here in the background, that helps us start to figure out how large are trees and structures this far away from us. And so what does that mean about structures that are this close? Like how big are things going to be here compared to here? So that's what we're currently sussing out. So I'm having this conversation and actively attempting to fall in love with this environment as a potential campaign world, so that the muse starts working the creation engine and sussing out, if I were to actually make this into a campaign space, what's not present, what do I need to be able to properly represent? So I'm letting her do the work here through the pixel pushing, while my brain is being, my ego has been tasked with the opportunity to make up an entire world in its own image as it sees fit, which is essentially one of the joys about role-playing, is it allows that creative energy to be applied to a place that isn't micromanaging your own life. You're creating a new reality that you get to play with and push through, if that makes any sense. But I want to leave, so I'm trying to create these gaps here, because when we come through with the water line is going to be like here on this. So we're creating this little river delta here that curves around like that and curves into this space and then comes around here like that. Like this is the water table that we're looking at like this. So we want to have like a little river that comes through here and then goes off screen, but then comes up like this. So we have this sort of a thing going on, and then we get to fill in the rocks that help create this river space here. And then we get to make this river space transparent. So when we dot in all the stars here, we get to dot in stars through here as well, and continue sculpting the rock to curve down like that. Like this is where I know we're going to end up going, just using the techniques of Bob Ross and world design again, those Bob Ross techniques really coming through for me here. But that's the environment. That's the topography. Like that. Those are the tools that I'm thinking about as I'm sitting here sculpting this stuff. Like that's where it's going to end up at. So I like the idea of this rock being here. But by doing layers like this, we can build in this language, and we'll have opportunities for these things to poke out and make themselves known, even though they're like sliding super far into the background. And at the end of this, we'll have basically a Bob Ross / Hallmark rustic community painting on the edge of the world. So it'll be pretty fucking cool. I am absolutely in love with the way that we can design worlds and space. Like I've been running Spelljammer Planescape stuff for decades. So I like thinking about like little encapsulated little worlds that have their own problems and solutions that when your character's strong enough, you can just yeet out of altogether or go find new ones to go in and explore. Hey, what's up, Zona? I encountered a planetary system where the rings were green because the rocks were completely overgrown with vegetation. The original rocks lying a mile or two beneath them. See, there you go. Very, very fun. So are you do you run second edition Spelljammer games, Zona? I don't know your history as a gamer or where you align at. Like if you're stuck as a forever DM, that kind of implies that you're a player if you encountered one, right? When we finish the exploration chapter, we're going to start working on the first appendix, the random system generator, and building artwork for that. So that would probably be, we'll do system stuff like this, like system illustrations and charts and graphs and stuff to demonstrate charting systems and stuff. That'll be part of the random system generator artwork that we do. It's only like 4 or 5 pages, but there's like 6 illustrations among those pages, so it's going to be intense. But it's all environmental stuff. It's no creatures. It's not really even ships. It's just environmental stuff. So it'll be just more of what we're doing here right now, and that'll be a lot of fun, honestly, and it'll be low stress, and it'll be a lot of just mind riffing like we're doing right now, and just making up stuff. So God's willing, it's going to be a lot of fun to do that the next couple of weeks. Oops, I got to fix my chair. So we'll be doing that. We'll probably be fleshing that out until maybe the end of November, and at that point, all the and on the backs off stage in the evenings. When I work independently off camera, we'll get all the diagrams and stuff done for the combat chapter. So when we finish this by the end of November, this and the exploration chapter, when we finish that will mean we'll have like maybe 4 illustrations left to do in the book. And then the conversion guide for Lazarax is charting that out. But I can be doing that once I finish all the diagrams for the combat chapter. So I think being done in the new year, I think that's where we're going to be at, like early mid January, I believe, is when we're going to actually have this piece finished. And then we'll shift the Eberron project to the morning like this, and then our evenings will be spent on martial powers and adventure design and like campaign design for my Spelljammer for my home table. So you'll be seeing adventure design content for both Spelljammer and Ravnica for martial powers. That's where I'll be spending all my creative energy time once this book is done. Mornings will be Eberron, doing all the same stuff, but for my Eberron adventure instead of Spelljammer. And then Monday, Thursday, Saturday, day shifts like Tuesday lunch, Monday lunch, Friday lunch, and then Saturday morning. Those 6 instances where I do non-morning stuff. Other projects will all be Spelljammer, Ravnica, martial power stuff. So keep an eye out for that. Like if you think this stuff is cool, there's a lot more of it coming down the pipe, honestly. So. And for those artists that are interested in what we're doing here, the The brushes that I use when I get to 500 subscribers, I will be providing my my tool set, the ASB file for all my tools. I'll provide those for free on my Patreon channel. Patreon's where I put all of my playtest content already anyway, so it's a good space for it. Let's be, yeah, that feels pretty good to be like that. I'm going to drop this down a little so it's respecting this border plane. This is like basically the midpoint that we have illustrated here. So when I'm putting these asteroids in, I want to make sure that we've got this midline going on here that's lining up like that. Here and like here, like we just went over. Around like that. So that's why I'm drawing everything as spheres. To have that buoyant, bouncy effect. I'm going to take those lines out before. There you go. Back to there. And push this down a bit. Here. I think I'm okay with that little chunk like that, so let's keep working this one here. But yeah, first we build this. We build the rocks, and then we put soil on them, and then vegetation on top of that, along with. Actually, after we put the soil down, that's when we're going to determine where the buildings are at. And all the structure stuff, and then we'll weave in trees, forests, and stuff like that among the structures. So we'll probably work both of those at the same time. I just kind of have to riff and just kind of, you know, doodle in rocks for a bit. Like this is just us kind of like doing ideation, seeing where things fall naturally, and you know, does it feel good and what's cool about it. Like this is like I have to keep my perspective in mind too. So that's gonna be like that. That's gonna be like that. There. I want to create another branch over here. I need that to fade out so it feels large. And as we continue fleshing this space out, be able to continue introducing closer and closer elements with more and more terrain to engage with. Just like that. Thank you. have to keep the idea of symmetry and unnatural, like aligning, like these stones being thin like this. That there's a I'm not jiving with this here, like having this like little line of rocks here pointing towards the camera. That doesn't feel, it's helping with the perspective kind of, because of the way that it's scaling in like that here, but it's too linear. It doesn't feel natural. So what that's going to lead me to do is cut these rocks out and push them over, so I can start opening up some space over here to throw another rock here into the space, so we can start creating some knots and helping further define this fork that we have here. Thank you, Timely Timer. How are we doing on time, by the way? Oh my God, it's 7:52 already. Time flies when you're having fun, but that's the way that it goes, son. So we just about ran out of foreground there. Like, that's a cool little gap that I can preserve. That lets me open up this space more. So now the water is like bending this way, around this way. But the topography and the scenery is pulling you this way around the curve. So this foreground stuff, we can probably like do like a cool house right here, and be able to push back like with a hill and like an elevation, like a significant elevation change. Obviously you can't see it because I'm on the wrong layer, but I can see like this foreground being to the point where like a person could be like this big, potentially this big, like with a building like this. That's in front. That's going to be silhouetted by the planet. I think that's going to be super fucking cool. And then as you look along here, it's going to be like dropping off a cliff. So it's going to have scale and scale and scale of smaller and smaller things as we move further back in the piece. I think that's going to work. That's also going to make this left side front end heavy. So I'm probably going to need to develop structures and stuff over here, like points of interest along this space over here, so there's a balance between the imposing presence of the planet, and there has to be something to, like, if we're using the rules of thirds, right? Here's our thirds essentially. So here, 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 and here are basically hot spots. This is actually bad proportions. Let me do that again. Actually, yeah, that's a third, and that's a third, and that's a third, and that's a third. If we're looking at from here, like if this is the top line here at the top of the planet, that's a third, that's roughly a third, and that's roughly a third. So here we have on this line, the hot spots on the rules of thirds are here, 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 and here. Here we can see there's a bend in the arc. That's a significant change to the composition. Here we see the ring meeting the planet. Here is actually close to the top edge. This is close to the top edge that expands here. So compositionally, this piece is setting itself up to be balanced very, very nicely. I'm going to want to have a point of interest here. That will be able to compare down to here, and we'll be able to pull from here to here that balances across. So whatever it is that we've got going, like maybe we'll put the sun here, right? And that we'll be able to use that as our point of reference whenever we're doing highlights on stuff. By having a sun there, it'll create a point of interest of something to look at. And then we'll be able to like do a highlight along here. a highlight like this, and we can do like highlights like this along the rocks, here, and then here, and then like we can have like a rimming, a light along there, which will help create the contrast with the darkness here. So like, yeah, so like that, and then having a radiance coming off of it, like that's going to be good composition because it's showing the larger system with that at a distance. Like you could even have like a moon here. Who knows? But that's the composition. That's where we're heading. So I got to bounce for the day. I think I'm going to be back for lunch. I've got more things I'm doing with martial powers with the class features. I found I was having a brain melt on one of the mechanics, but I figured it out last night while I was meditating. So I'm really excited about that. But that's us for the day. So hey, thanks a lot, Zona. I'm really looking forward to continuing this piece. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow, tonight. What is it? 8 o'clock now. I'll probably be back like in 5 or 6 hours. Just to fuck around with martial powers for an hour or two. I'll post that when I'm live. Tomorrow morning, I'll be working on the book cover commission that I've been recruited to do. And then I'll be back Monday morning to continue working on this. So we'll be done with this piece by next week, no problem. And we'll dive into the next pieces. So I'll have new things to share with you guys on Monday. So I'll see you then. Thanks a lot for being here. Like, subscribe, bell icon, trying to get to 500 subscribers. When we do, I will share the brush sets that I've been using, and you'll get notifications when I go live again. So thanks a lot. See you guys on the other side. Shill.